Welcome back to the kitchen, everybody. This is your boy, the Mad Chef, and tonight I'm going to be changing your entire breakfast meal prep game. All right, this is going to be another one of those healthy recipes. We haven't done it in a while. We've done a lot of salads this year. We've done a lot of other really great tasting healthy meals, but we have not done enough healthy breakfast. Breakfast is without a doubt the most important meal of the day, and we need to treat it as such. Today, we're going to be giving the iconic sausage, egg, and cheese a healthy facelift. We're going to be making an incredible from scratch whole wheat focaccia bread. That's right, it's a sausage, egg, and cheese focaccia sandwich, a flatbread sandwich. And guys, this focaccia bread is honestly the most fancy bread I've ever made. It's the most elevated bread I've ever made on my own. And it's going to be mind-blowing. It's amazing, and it's super simple. We're going to be making our own chicken sausage, a maple chicken sausage. Guys, don't be alarmed at this. You don't need any sort of fancy machinery or really any specialty items, unless you consider whole wheat flour a specialty. All right, so our flatbread's been in the oven for a few minutes. We're going to let that cook completely first before we start working on the other components of the sandwich, because we need to give that focaccia time to cool off, so that way we can cut it and make it into some nice sandwiches. But before we get into any of that, let's jump back a couple hours ago so I can show you how to make this amazing focaccia bread and our maple chicken sausage. So one thing that is incredibly important to note when you're making focaccia is that your water temperature cannot exceed 95 degrees Fahrenheit. And I have 1 cup of water, and to that I'm going to be adding in 1.5 teaspoons of granulated sugar and 1.5 teaspoons of instant or rapid rise yeast. We're going to get that combined and let that sit and bloom for about 5 minutes. And now that that's out of the way, let's talk about our dry ingredients. In this bowl is 3 cups of whole wheat flour. And to that, we're going to be adding in 1 teaspoon of table salt or fine sea salt. And I know what you guys are saying. That doesn't sound like nearly enough salt to season this. Don't worry. There's more salt that's going to be added to this later on. And once we have everything thoroughly incorporated, we're going to be adding in our olive oil. And guys, this is going to take a lot, so make sure you have plenty on hand. So we're going to be adding this in 1 tablespoon at a time, making sure everything is thoroughly hydrated, leaving no big lumps or clumps. And we're going to repeat this process until we've incorporated in 3 full tablespoons. So what this is going to do is not only add additional moisture to our focaccia, but it's going to be adding a lot of flavor. This is basically an olive oil bread. And this ain't the end of it either. And once we have all 3 tablespoons of olive oil completely worked into our flour mixture, it's time to start introducing our liquid yeasty boys that are fully bloomed. And we're going to be doing this gradually, little splashes at a time, making sure that our dough is fully hydrated before we add more. And once we've used up all of our yeast water and we have a shaggy sort of dough starting to form and clump together, it's time to give it a couple of quick kneads. And once you're able to form it into a rough, loose ball, it's time to put this over to a flour work surface and give it some tough loving. All right, it's time to roll this bad boy out. And the first thing we're going to do is hit it up with yet again some more extra virgin olive oil, only a half tablespoon at a time until we start getting this formed. The extra moisture is actually going to help us form a cohesive and smooth dough ball. Working with whole wheat flour is a lot different than working with all-purpose or even bread flour. There's a lot more protein, so there's a lot more to work with. That being said, just to give you guys a heads up, it's going to take roughly 10 minutes to get it from this stage into a nice, smooth, taut ball of dough. Again, we've got to work that gluten in, and because it's whole wheat, it's going to fight you more than anything else, more than any other kind of flour. And once we have a nice, smooth ball that looks something like this, we are going to transfer it into a bowl that has been generously greased with extra virgin olive oil. You do want a little bit of a pull down bottom. And then we're going to put the dough ball in, get it a spin down bottom, so that way it soaks up that nice extra virgin olive oil. And then we are going to not only cover the top of our dough with extra virgin olive oil, we are going to use a brush to make sure every inch of that top surface is covered. Again, this thing needs a lot of extra virgin olive oil. You almost need to be an oil baron in this sense. So the only thing left to do now is to cover it up with some nice plastic wrap and let it proof for 1 hour. That being said, let's start on our chicken sausage. And in this bowl, I have 1 pound of a lean ground chicken. This is 98% lean. Now guys, if you want to substitute with ground turkey, be my guest. And what we're going to do now is hit it up with a blend of sausage seasoning that consists of 1 teaspoon of garlic powder, 1 teaspoon of regular paprika, 1.5 teaspoons of kosher salt, half a teaspoon of ground black pepper, half a teaspoon of red chili flakes, 1 teaspoon of ground sage because it is a must, and a half a teaspoon of thyme. And we'll be adding this in batches, making sure everything is fully incorporated into the meat. And once we used all of our beautiful spices and everything is homogeneous and well combined, we're going to be hitting this up with 1 tablespoon of a good quality maple syrup. Quality counts, guys. And this is just some grade A organic maple syrup from Sapjack. No, I'm not pimping the brand out, but in my experience, it's the best you can get from the store. And after we add that in, we're going to mix everything up until it's nice and homogeneous and kind of looks like a bloody paste. We'll put a lid on this and let it sit in the refrigerator until we're ready to use it. If you want a stronger or better flavor sausage, let this ferment overnight in the fridge and you'll have amazing results. But my schedule didn't really allow time for that, so we're going to slam this in the fridge and go check on our focaccia. An hour is up and let's take a look at that beautiful dough. And guys, look how soft and smooth it is. And as you can see here, we are doing something that's very common in a lot of European style breads, and that's lamination. And you've seen me do this before, but this is completely a different ball game than any other bread I've made. This is the whole wheat bread, so it's going to take a lot more elbow grease to get it where we need to be. As you can see here, the corners aren't really sealing as easily as it normally does. So I'm going back behind every series of slap and folds and just trying to make it flat and as even as possible. But please keep in mind that we don't want to over laminate this. About 5 or 6 times is going to do the trick. And once we have done that and gotten it all nice and smooth, we're going to transfer it into a heavily oiled baking sheet. Again, you need to be an oil baron here. And now we're going to be transforming this focaccia into its iconic flatbread form. And we're going to be using a process that is traditionally referred to as making dimples. This is how we're going to stretch out the dough and also create those air pockets, those bubbles in the finished product that gives it its iconic look and texture. So basically all we're doing is applying pressure to our fingertips, creating these little indentations that they call dimples. And this is how we stretch the dough out onto the pan. Keep in mind, this just came out of its first proofing cycle, which means most of those glutens are not relaxed yet. And that's also why you see me putting olive oil on my hands in between making dimples. This relaxes my fingers so I can move the bread with its own weight. Now, once you get to the point where you start feeling resistance even with the oil on your hands, it's time to call it quits. That's the bread's way of telling you it's done all it can do. And just like I told you with the Detroit style pizzas, making that dough, we cannot afford to overwork it right now because that's going to make this bread tough and unworkable. So like we did before we put the plastic wrap on, we're going to go ahead and just put a nice drizzle of extra virgin olive oil on the top of this dough, spread it out with a brush, and let it proof again, covered with plastic wrap for about 30 minutes. Second proof is up, and take a look at this dough, guys. It is just super easy to work. As you can see, I'm just barely pushing down on this and it's going everywhere I need it to. That's why it's so important not to overwork this when we put it in the pan. And all we're going to do now is just brush on a very light layer of extra virgin olive oil. And this is where you can get fancy with different toppings, but we're just going to go with a traditional plain flatbread. So all we're going to do is give it one final dose of kosher salt right over the top to give it the final layer of seasoning. Then we're going to put it in the oven on 400 degrees and cook it for 20 to 25 minutes. Now that this is going, it's time to start our toppings. And the first thing in is just 2 pieces of smoked turkey bacon that I've cut into half. And we're just going to put it in a pan that's been preheating on medium-high heat. And this is going to cook real quickly. All we're trying to do is get some good color on it and let it crisp up. And in the pan below it, yes, is a half a tablespoon of unsalted butter. Now guys, all the other elements of this sandwich has been made really healthy, so it's not going to impact your calorie budget much. And what's going in is just 2 large egg whites that I've beaten together with some salt and some freshly cracked black pepper, and we're just going to cook this like an omelet. And the next thing in, of course, is the star of the show, our homemade chicken sausage. So we're just going to put it in a large pan that's just been coated with a 0-calorie olive oil spray, and we're just going to measure it out with this ice cream scoop. And we're going to let this chicken sausage cook off for about 3 minutes. And once your egg whites have started to settle just a little bit, I'm just moving this around to make sure there's no liquid egg white. And once we have, the bottom cooked enough to where we can lift it with ease, we're going to go ahead and give it the classic omelet flip like this. And don't worry if your edges have kind of folded over on itself. We're going to eventually shape this into a rectangular or square shaped patty. And after we toast it for about another 30 seconds, we're going to start flipping it over. And as you can see, my patty didn't form exactly the way I wanted it to, but we're going to cut this to fit the sandwich in the end, so don't worry about appearance right now. And after 3 minutes, we should have a nice seared patch on the bottom, and we're going to smash it out just like we did with the chicken burger recipe at the beginning of the year. And if you're not familiar with it, that's no big deal. It wasn't super popular. But we're going to cook it the same way, smashing it out super thin as we can, on the sear patch, and we're going to let this go ahead and cook off for another 3 minutes. Now you may be wondering what the new butter is for, and that's because my wife didn't really want a healthy sandwich. She just wanted a scrambled egg focaccia. So we're going to be cooking her whole scrambled eggs pretty much in the same manner. And now it's time to pull up our bacon because it's nice and crisp. And after 3 minutes, we have a beautiful sear at the bottom of our patties. And then we're just going to flip them over one more time for about 30 seconds to cook through the top of the patties. And then I'm going to show you guys how to put this thing all together. All right. And this is a shot of our homemade whole wheat focaccia bread. Pretty sexy, right? All right. So all that cooking that we just did for all the components of this sandwich was done in under 10 minutes. So if you have all the ingredients at the ready, this only takes like maybe after you put it in the oven and toast it, or if you put it in a panini press, you can have the sandwich on the table in under 15 minutes. So that's pretty phenomenal in and of itself. And in 2 hours from start to finish, you can have an amazing whole grain focaccia. All right, so here's what we're going to do. We'll try to find halfway. So ideally, you want something like 2 6-inch pieces like this. So here's what we're going to do. All right, so the wife is going to be pretty simple. She's not really doing the whole healthy breakfast sandwich, which is why she has a folded scrambled egg right here. And basically, for her, all I'm going to do is put the scrambled egg across her sandwich and then fold it with some cheese. So let's go ahead and get hers on there so you can see what I'm talking about. And that's why I left this scrambled egg looking like it is, because that's good coverage. And all we're going to do with hers is add 2 slices of reduced fat American cheese. This is 2% American cheese. Every aspect of this sandwich is reduced in fat, and the metrics are healthier by some degree. And what I want to do now is we're just going to fold it over like that. And then down the middle, I want to trim off this edge here because there's just too much bread on the edge here. And this is your focaccia flatbread breakfast sandwich. All right, so my camera battery died, so I'm retaking this part. All right, so all we did here is just take 2 pieces of our chicken sausage, and we took that folded egg white and we cut it in half because you want to kind of spread it over your sausage. You don't want too much egg over your meat, over your protein, because then the egg's going to take over the flavor. All right, so now we're just going to top with that low-fat American cheese. Now, granted, this does not taste great on its own, but on a sandwich, it's actually pretty decent. And then X marks the spot. And then we're going to fold and close this guy. Actually, since this is a bit of a tougher bread because it's whole wheat, I'm just going to cut it and then top it. All right. On top and in half. So technically, this recipe makes 4 breakfast sandwiches. And I'm okay with it. You know what? Yeah, I'm okay with the extra bread at the end. So all we're doing now is we're loading our nice sandwiches onto another baking sheet. And then we're going to pop them in the oven on 350 for about 5 minutes. We're not really looking to cook this really any further. We're just trying to melt the cheese. So I'll see you guys again at reveal. It's hard to think from this point of view that this is a healthy sandwich. I mean, look at this thing. This is a monster. Oh my God. if it was one thing that I could change about this, it's not a bad thing. The sausage needs a little more maple. It's there, but it's kind of like an accent flavor. So if I make this again, I'm going to go from 1 tablespoon to 2 tablespoons of maple syrup. The seasoning is right. The texture is right. The flavor is right. This is an incredible bite. And we did it all from scratch. Anyone can say they've had a sausage, egg, and cheese biscuit. Anyone can say they had a sausage, egg, and cheese bagel or burrito. But not everyone can say I had this amazing sausage, egg, and cheese healthy flatbread sandwich. And guys, this took no fancy machinery, no specialty items. The longest cooking item is the bread, and that was only 2 hours, and that includes the proof time. Cooking, again, with all of this together, if you have the ingredients, you can have a breakfast sandwich on the table, fresh and hot, in under 15 minutes. And guys, that's not bad. You can freeze these or heat them up in the morning. This is a game changer. I just can't believe we make focaccia on the channel. Like, that's a really sophisticated bread. And it's really good. I don't need a biscuit anymore. All right, until next time, I want to shut up and eat this because I can't stop talking about it. Please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And I hope you try this because this is going to change your mornings. This is good, clean protein. This is fiber. This is whole grain. This is everything you need. Even the cheese is low fat. So what can you grab about? You can't knock this at all. And it's fresh. Until next time, this is your boy, the Mad Chef, and I'll see you in the next video.